Well, the Myanmar Army-backed election body has revealed that polls are set for November 2025. Well, this is the first time a date has been raised since Army Chief Min Aung Hlaing promised to hold elections after launching a coup in 2021. Revelations emerged from a recent meeting between the election body and some registered political parties. A member of the main opposition party, that's the USDP, told CNA the meeting included discussing possible dates. Parties are told to prepare for polls in November next year. But the election body stressed this would only take place if the country was stable at that point. Local media DVB also quoted the election body as saying polls would not be held on one day, but spread over a couple of days. And more, we're joined by our Myanmar correspondent Leong Wai Kit. Well, we just heard there the election body did say that polls would be contingent on stability being actually achieved in the country. Now, fierce clashes, as we constantly discuss, are still ongoing in Myanmar. Yet, by giving a date, November next year, the army seems to be painting itself into a corner. Why would it choose to do that?
Well, first of all, Wei Su, I must point out that this is not an official announcement by the Myanmar military, nor is it on the part of the official elections body. This is merely a discussion that was revealed to us by some of our sources. But the date, November 2025, has been floated to me by my sources, and I've previously talked about it, that this is the timeline that Min Aung Hlaing is looking at so that he can move his loyal aides across the political spectrum, as well as deploy newly recruited soldiers, as well as newly recruited villagemen to be sent as election agents. But what's interesting here is the timing of this piece of information. This took place shortly after China's top diplomat Wang Yi met Min Aung Hlaing in Naypyidaw for the first time since the coup. And many of my sources have told me that the only way Min Aung Hlaing can get an invite to China would be for him to prove that there is solid confirmation, solid plans to bring the country back to democracy, as well as to hold elections with a timeline. So many see this as perhaps the first step to Min Aung Hlaing getting an invite to China. And if this were so, it would be significant for the Myanmar junta because, number one, going to China, Min Aung Hlaing going to Beijing, would signify that he is a legitimate leader in Myanmar. And number two, going to Beijing could also mean opening up more doors of cooperation, a crucial time for the Myanmar army, who is now battling waves of resistance fighters across the country.
So, Wai Kit, assuming this election does in fact happen, when it does happen, the suggestion is that, as you say, it's not just recognition by China. This might actually improve engagement between Myanmar and the rest of the international community.
Right, but then the engagement, Wei Su, will also depend on how certain actors outside of Myanmar would react to a post-election Myanmar. From what I understand, the ASEAN right now does not have a unified position on dealing with a post-election Myanmar. One academic I spoke to recently said that if the bloc continues to stay silent on these would-be elections, it's going to lose credibility even further. Now, what's important to note is that ASEAN cannot interfere in another country's elections process, but it needs to now look at what other actors, especially China, are doing with this latest development. Wang Yi has already said that China will support Myanmar's election. It's even pledged political aid. It's also pledged aid to the political reform process, and even the newly appointed UN envoy, special envoy for Myanmar, Julie Bishop, she's already hinted that she's willing to play a bridge between China and ASEAN when it comes to resolving the Myanmar crisis.
Thanks, Leong Wai Kit, looking at implications of possible elections next year in Myanmar. And he was reporting live just there from